Hi everybody, this is Peggy. You guys have been asking me for a walkthrough on some stuff. So I'm going to start with a walkthrough on how to make this. So this is this finishes out as a 23-inch by 23-inch quilted taro mat or tablecloth or outdoor cloth or place setting or whatever you want or need in your life that needs to be quilted. So for this project, the most important things that you need to know is that you need a 12.5-inch centerpiece, square piece of fabric for your center. You need a 28 by 28-inch piece of fabric for your back. This project does not use binding. You will not need to worry about that for this project. And you need to know that your strips for the outer layers that go around this centerpiece are 2.5 inches wide. The length and number is going to be determined by what you want to do. A single strip of fabric, then you will need enough to go around 3 times. If you're going to sew other pieces together to make a longer piece, then keep in mind that 1/4-inch seam allowances as you put these pieces all together. I just made a great big long chain of stuff and then went around and around and around. I'm going to focus on showing you the technique more than anything. This is going to be in 2 videos. The first video, we're going to put together the quilt top. This is called the quilt top when you put together your piece here. It's just a glorified large block. So if you have another block or pattern or something in mind, feel free to do that. And then the second video, I'm going to show you how to prep it, get it ready for quilting, quilt it, and then finish it. So that's going to be pretty easy. I hope you guys enjoy these. I probably talk more than I do anything else. So hang out with me, have some fun, relax. Hopefully this will help some of you guys that have been asking questions. For those of you who do know what you're doing or have more questions, don't be afraid to comment below. I'd love to hear back. I'd love to hear any feedback that you guys have and suggestions and ideas for future projects that you'd like to see me make on camera. And with that in mind, we are going to get started. Hello everybody, Peggy here. So I promised earlier that I was going to do a walkthrough showing everybody how to make one of these quilted taro mats or placemats or tablecloths or whatever one you want to use this for. I'll let you know what I do as I'm doing it. This is the first time I've ever done one of these, so be kind, be nice, tell me I'm pretty. These are the ones that we just made recently. And of course, as always, when I said to my wife, I'm going to make another one. I'm going to make another one. I'm going to make another one. So my wife, ever helpful person that she is, jumped straight out and said, well, we have to do this one. So we're going to do this one. This is going to have our little castle scene on the front. It's going to have our sleeve on the back. First and foremost, I am still pretty much a beginner at all things quilting. Anybody who's been watching my wife on her channel is just Lisa Pepez, if you don't know, will have heard me talk about my stuff and what I do online for my Etsy shop. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just getting ready to do another one. And the first thing I will tell you is that this video is mostly aimed at beginners. I don't know the proper terminologies. I don't know half of this stuff. So I'm not even going to pretend to be an expert. And we're just going to go through it. Those of you with experience in quilting are going to pick up on what I'm doing right away. Those of you without experience in quilting or sewing in general, I'm just hoping that you'll enjoy the video and get a few ideas on tips and tricks and things that might help you if that's something that you guys decide you want to do to start doing your own sewing and stuff. So the first thing that we're going to do, when I did my original ones, I didn't measure because I sew for a living, which means I've always got extra fabric and extra stuff. Somewhere along the video, ideally you will have already seen a little snippet at the beginning of the video showing what I'm doing. So the first thing that you're going to want is a 12.5 by 12.5-inch piece. And this is going to be your front and center. Do you remember on this we have a single center piece here. This is one single piece. So this is where I'm cutting now. It's actually simpler than I'm making it sound like. You'll see as we go. I just like talking to myself, so I'm going to make conversation. I've also, and this, if you're a beginner, I will tell you right now, learn to love ironing. just learn to love ironing. I'm not agonizing about where I'm cutting things or how I'm cutting things. You'll see why in a bit. Because all of this stuff is going to get cut up and turned into the scrap. If you're happening to use a rotary cutter, just remember to be really careful as you go through these. These things can really cut you. Of course, first thing I do I normally have trouble using a rotary cutter? Of course not. But the camera's on. Okay. So when you're going forward, never ever, and again, this is a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is aimed towards beginners. So if you're an experienced quilter or sewer and are looking at this going, well, any idiot knows that. It's like, well, some of this stuff I certainly didn't know when I got started. So this is a little tiny bit, that corner I had an issue with, a little tiny bit over there. So I just flipped it, lined it back up again, and throw that in the scrap bin. So, yeah, you can see the ironing board. You can see the love of ironing happening over here right now. This is cotton. My preferred way to iron cottons for quilting is on the one down, the next one up says cotton. I go back by one, and I use like an insane amount of steam. That's my preference. Honestly, it doesn't matter. If you don't have an iron, you can just skip this step. Just try to make sure that the piece that you're choosing doesn't have a lot of wrinkles in it. What they also say is to wash and iron all your fabric before you start. As far as I'm concerned, that's a personal choice. But that's because most of what I make really isn't intended to be put through the wash. So it's a wasted step for what I do for most of my stuff. Anyway, this piece is done, and we're going to just let it wait there for a minute. We're going to set this out. Now, I do a technique, a quilt as you go technique. So what's going to happen, and I'll do I'm probably going to over-explain everything because why not? This is going to take me a while anyway. What's going to happen is that when I'm done, there's going to be layers. There's going to be layers. It's going to be the thing. And when I'm done, what's left is going to fold up and over to the front and get sewn down. I know it looks crappy right now, but you'll see better when we get there. So when you're picking up your fabric for this, keep in mind that you will need, the one I'm doing is going to finish out approximately 23 inches by 23 inches. So for your backing, because when you do a quilted project, you're going to have your top piece, which is going to get built up. You're going to have your batting, and then you're going to have your bottom piece. Your backing for this project needs to be minimum 26 by 26. And again, I do a different technique for finishing it, and that will matter at the end. So 12 and a half inch square for the center. Whatever fabric you're going to use your backing, you need to have a 26 by 26 inch piece. And again, I'm going to do a little thing at the beginning. So if you're not taking notes or don't want to take notes, just scroll back to the beginning and grab the dimensions from there. So what happens at this point is for my first 4 rounds, and again, I'm not a professional quilter, so I'm not going to try to get super, super technical with anybody. I'll show you this. You fold it in half. You can ignore this for now. You will be trimming it off. There's a reason for my madness. So you take off the very end, and you don't got to take off a ton. But I like to do it from this side, because if you line up your ruler with the back end of the fabric, not the open ends, if you line it up with this stuff and you cut from that, you'll be less likely to get a kink in your fabric, which is where if you cut this at a bit of an angle, like that, then what's going to happen is when you unfold it, it's going to go this way, then this way, and we want it nice and straight. So we do this. I'm just a fiddly because I can be. Flip it back, flip it over while hold it carefully, flip it back over. And if you're already used to cutting fabrics with a certain amount of precision and have a better way to do it, obviously, by all means, go ahead. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. 2.5 inch strips. We are not concerned with the length at this point. I have 4 going here. The length doesn't matter as long as they're 2.5 inches wide. Ideally, your very first one, you're going to be using some scrap. So there's that right there. So we've got a bunch. We've got some. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this piece. I'm going to take everything over to the machine in a minute. What we're going to do is we're going to take this piece and we're going to connect them here, 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 and here, and do our first stitching around with just one fabric. So this is my first time actually doing this, showing other people how to do it. I am going to be trying to track this as I go, because when I did the first one, anybody who's familiar with what I do, I have an Etsy shop, I have lots of scrap, I have lots of stuff, so I get the luxury of just cutting shit up and doing things with it and not worrying about whether I've cut up too much, not enough. If I cut up too much, I will use it in the next project. If I cut up not enough, I just go cut some more. Some of my fabrics I actually buy by the bolt now. So let's keep that in mind as we're going through things. So basically what we want to do is we want to sew all the way around this. We want to sew strips of this on. Now this is a 12.5 inch square. So you will snip off the end piece here. You can use a ruler and rotary cutter if you think that's going to make a difference for you. You can just use your scissors. So now, because this particular fabric doesn't have an upside right or an upside down, we don't really care. Obviously, pretty sides together. And pretty sides together. Let me bring this over here to show you right quick. And just a little bit of an overlap. So this is my strip that I'm going to add. Go a little tiny bit over. This piece ends here. Now, if you've got lots of fabric and have fabric to waste, then go like over like this. Because again, I'm doing this video mostly for beginners. If you're an experienced quilter, you're going to be able to go flip, 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 and go, oh, that's how it's done, and just go ahead and do it. If you're a beginner and you're interested in getting anything out of this, if you go a little bit over, then if something shifts, like if you're sewing and this shifts a bit, I don't know how to describe it, and maybe I'll get better at showing that. I've promised at least 2 videos. So go a little bit over so that if anything shifts, then you're still going to be fine. And then from there, I'm going to do it from this direction. I'm going to change it a little bit for myself because everybody has their own thing that's most comfortable. So just line it up. Now, this is where you're going to, I'm lazy, I don't use the pins, I don't use the whatever. This is where you're going to this is where you're going to pin it. I should have pinned it while I was back over at the table. Don't worry about, if you have to put one of these every inch to feel confident and feel like you're doing it right, then do that. Like anything else in life, as long as it's working for you, don't worry about what other people think you should be doing or how you should be doing it. This is a schmancy machine, it's a Janome. It's my favorite machine, so I'm doing it on this machine today. Going forward for the next project I do, I think I might do it on one of my cheaper machines, because you can do this on any machine. You do not need a fancy machine for this. Okay, so I had to take a quick break and switch out the feet on my machine. For future videos, I think I might actually pull out my little machine, because I really want people to really feel confident. You do not need these big monster machines in order to make really good products. So we're gonna move along now that I've got the right stuff on this machine. So this is not a design that requires precision. Now, certain types of quilting do require precision. This is something I'm showing people for beginners. If you are a skilled quilter, you're gonna hopefully know exactly what I mean here. But we're taking our 12.5 inch square, we're sewing on 2.5 inch strips. Pretty sides go together. Line up the top of this one with the top of that one. pin the crap out of it, clip the crap out of it, do whatever you need to do to feel like it's being held in place. Your first strip, again, if you're an experienced quilter, your first strip is obviously going to be 12.5 inches because it's only going from here to here. So let's just throw that on. Now, if you are less experienced and less confident, ideally you want a 1/4 inch seam, do a 1/2 inch seam. Do whatever size seam makes sense to you. The wider your seam is, the narrower this piece is going to be when it's done, but it doesn't matter. This is your quilt. You do it your way. I tend to avoid backstitching because I'm lazy. But yeah, backstitch before you start. But I do know that I'm going all the way around and there's going to be a stitch over here at the end anyway. So just go all the way across. Go all the way across. Now, I didn't cut this. There's a reason for that because I'm going to use, so I'm just keeping an eye on where the end is. With some practice and experience, you can actually feel it. You can feel the little bump. So I've got my finger on where the little bump is and there we go. It's done. This I'm doing at the 2.4 millimeter setting. I have a schmancy cutter, so I don't have to cut the thread. Take it out. So I'm going to show you guys your first trick. Your first trick is, once you get this done, remember I sewed, okay, now I've got, this is the back, this is the front. So this is where I sewed off. That's the strip that's left over. We already know that this is a square, so I'm just going to line this up with that. I'm going to line this up here, and I'm not going to cut here. I'm going to push the ruler out a little bit. I'm coming out just the tiniest bit because if I'm cutting and something shifts, it's unlikely to shift that much. But then again, if you're just learning and don't have a lot of experience, the possibility exists. I've got 2 dogs. What if one barks and startles me, right? I'm going to come out just the tiniest bit and that's, there we go. That's where I'm going to cut. That's done. Now, this is still a big enough piece that I can use it for the next step, which I'll get to as I move along. So I'm going to save that piece. Now, I've got 2 options. I'm going to flip this over. I can do what's called finger pressing, and that is just to get this up here. And again, I hope I'm not being too boring for those of you with quilting experience, but so finger pressing is just literally what it says. Take your fingers and just press it down, open it up. Trick with finger pressing, and it's not, and again, it doesn't take very long to get the hang of it, but the trick with finger pressing is not to go, you're not crushing things. If you push really, really hard, you can end up stretching this out of shape. So you just want to get that to open up. That's it. That's all you're doing. Okay, now you're going to take your next strip. Remember I cut 4 of these? And again, I cut them nice and long. There's a reason. We'll find out in a minute. And we'll take the next strip. Take the next strip, and we're going to go to the top of this. This is the one we just added. We're going to go right to the very top. Remember we intentionally went a little bit over, so that's okay right here. We're going to line that up to there. We're going to go the tiniest bit above the top. We're going to take our time. Pins, clips, whatever you need. I will say that as you get practice with this, you'll need them less and less. If I were doing a bigger project, there would be 1,000 pins in this. Don't get me wrong. I use the pins. This is just around the same size as stuff that I already do for like hours every day. So I get lucky and can skip a few steps. Don't be afraid to use the pins, anything that you want to see. I've got pins, I've got clips. Don't be afraid to use them. Only I'm still going to be lazy and not use them. Okay. Your next piece is 12.5 inches plus your 2 inches. Now this is for people who are cutting to size as they go. You don't need to, but so this next piece is going to be 14 inches. Give yourself 14.25 so you can have that little tiny bit of overlap at each end. So maybe 14.5. Let's call it 14.5. That's your next piece. Because now you have 12.5 inches here. I'm just going to go right off camera. 12.5 inches here plus the 2 inches that you added at the top. So now, as you get more advanced with your quilting, the direction of the seam can matter. It doesn't matter to us right now. It's just not something that we're worried about at this point in time because the project is not big enough or extensive enough to be affected by that. At least I don't think it is. So again, whatever seam allowance you did on the first piece, make sure you do the same on this. Now your seam allowance is the distance from the outside to where your needle is. So try your best to keep them the same. Go all the way across, and again, I already know that this is going to get sewn over with something else, so I'm being a little bit lazy about my back stitching. I will tell you right now, when I first started sewing, my back stitching was fucking insane. Apparently this is sewing and swearing. I just realized I'm swearing a lot. Nobody's surprised. My wife was over there looking at me going, yeah, and? Anyway, okay. When I started sewing, I would backstitch. I would be like, back, forth. And guess what? There's nothing wrong with that. You'll continue doing it because it's your comfort zone. You will stop doing it because you don't need to anymore. And that's entirely up to you. If you ever advance to the stage, if you are already advanced to the stage, or if you do advance to the stage where you are doing the really intricate high-end quilting and stuff like that, which exists and it's fucking awesome and I wish I could do it, then yeah, that sort of stuff might start to matter. But if you're just starting out or don't know much about sewing, knock yourself out. It's better than not doing it at all. And that's always been my philosophy in life. It's better than just, you know, you go, oh, I don't know how to do that, so you just don't. So I'm over here off to the side. I'm just babbling. You're just going to watch me from the corner there. There we go. I am just, again, finger pressing. The first one I pressed out. So this one I'm also going to press out. And I will say, if you are an experienced quilter and you're just watching this because you want to laugh at me while I babble, and if I'm making a critical mistake that I shouldn't be making, absolutely, let me know in the comments. If you're learning something from this and it's helping you with your confidence, with your whatever, that as well. Now, see this here? I'm not sure if I've got a good camera angle on this, and this is my very first video, so I don't want to screw around too badly, but this piece here is from here to here. This piece here is the same size. So that's, we said 14.5 inches. So you want two. So far your materials are a 12.5 piece of one fabric, 12.5, 14, 14 of the next fabric. And again, I've already finger pressed it. Sometimes when you line these up, then don't forget, we intentionally went a bit long. So this piece is sticking out a bit. This is white on white. I hope you guys can see it. If you can't, then maybe I will just do a quick repeat of this video later on. Maybe it'll be better quality and less swearing than this one. Anyway, if your fabrics are not, you want them to line up as good as possible. So when you're lining up your fabrics, don't pull this, but don't be afraid to move it around. If this is off center this way, don't be afraid to wiggle it back into place. Don't be afraid to get under here and give it a bit of a tug. Just remember that you don't want to use a lot of pressure. You don't want to stretch it. You don't want to stretch this, because if I pull this and give it a good hard stretch, then when I'm done, this is going to have a big pucker in it. And again, for this project, it's pretty forgiving. This is pretty easy. At least I think it is. Now, something else to remember is that if you are sewing by hand, this is a pretty easy project to sew by hand. Not everybody has a sewing machine. Not everybody wants a sewing machine. So we're good here. So that's another 14.5 inch piece. Again, back over here. So again, get your ruler lined up. Man, you guys must be bored already. Usually when I'm chatting with my wife on her channel, I'm a walking, talking shit show. So give it that little tiny bit extra. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. You probably can't, but I mean, there will be little bits that aren't perfectly straight, and you don't have to agonize. Those will sort themselves out. Again, saving this for later. Finger pressing. Finger pressing, finger pressing, finger pressing. Next piece is going to go 2 inches, 12.5 inches, 2 inches. Give yourself an extra ½ inch so that, and again, if you're I'm going to say the same thing over and over again. If you're an experienced quilter, then you're probably going, I don't need the extra ½ inch, but thanks. But if you're not experienced, give yourself some extra space. So then you're going to line this one up here. You're going to give yourself that up. See, look at that. There is some seam allowance. So maybe I'll turn this around. This stuff at the end, the beginning and end, this is called selvage. These are the These are the little extra bits that, this is when they're manufacturing this stuff. These are the edges as they manufacture these giant long bolts. You don't want those. You don't want those visible on your fabric. Bring it over here and sew it on. Now, all the way across. Figure out where, find your end, look for it, whatever. Go across. Get a couple extra stitches in there. Back stitch if that's your thing. Stop. There you go. So, again, finger press this out. Now, I'm going to stop the camera for a minute or pause the camera, or I'm going to edit and skip forward. This is where you learn to love ironing, because now you're going to go back over to the ironing board and you're going to, now that you've got the first one done, always, this has got a strip all the way around. This has got your centerpiece here. It's got a strip all the way around. Look at that. The magical power of the internet. I am back. Actually, ironing at this stage doesn't take long. So, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next is some interesting stuff. So, we got our first round done. Okay, so here's where we are so far. We got our first round around here. So we've got our 12.5 inch circle center. We've got a 12.5 inch piece to start our round. Then a 14.5, then a 14.5, then a 16.5. We've got everything sorted out here. First one's done. Now, if you want to stop it at this point, skip ahead and get to the part where I'm finishing it all up, and you're good to go. Some people don't want a huge, massive cloth. You could also do this exact same thing, scaling it up or scaling it down. You can have like a 6-inch center and go around. You can use 2-inch strips, 1-inch strips. I wouldn't go less than 1 because then you get really, really narrow. If you're hand sewing, this isn't a horrible, horrible project to start with, especially if you do a smaller one to start. Maybe you start with a 6-inch in the center and then work your way up from there. So it's not too difficult so far. Okay, so these are the pieces that I had left over from putting the first row of fabric on there. This is the pieces that I cut and haven't got to yet. So we've got a bunch of stuff. Now, for my next rows, I'm going to need a certain amount of fabric, but I'm just going to go here. I kind of lined everything up. I'll straighten everything up as I go. I'm just taking off those selvages so I don't end up accidentally putting them back into the fabric, because the last thing you want is for something like that to show up as you go. So I'm just going to stack this up. I'm not going to agonize about it. I'm just going to go stacking everything up. Put that there, put that there. And I'm going to start cutting. Now, for this particular project, I did not use any particular sizes. I'm just going to take my ruler. Now, if you are a beginner, obviously go ahead and take whatever, do 1 at a time, 2 at a time, do whatever makes sense for you. I'm going to take a couple of pretty small ones. I'm going to do that. And again, I have the luxury of having extra fabric, so if I end up with a little bit of whatever, I don't have to care. I'm going to make this one pretty long. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go, yeah, this sounds good. I want this to be random. I want this to be random. I'm lining the ruler up, the mark on the ruler, I'm lining up here and here as I cut. And these last two should be good enough. Okay, so this may or may not be enough. I'm not concerned. And again, for me, this is easy because I have the luxury of not caring, and I already know up front that I'm doing more than one of these, so I'm probably going to cut these next one up in the next couple of minutes. I'll do that. I will do that later. I'm not going to make you guys watch me do this for hours. I'm also going to take this one. Remember this first piece that I cut that thing out of? That I cut the original square out of? Well, now I'm going to go and lay this out. That looks good. I don't need it to be perfect. And I'm going to start cutting. I'm going to start cutting 2.5-inch strips. Now, I'm going to have to iron every last bit of this. If you are just starting out, then maybe you're going to want to do just your next round in a single solid color. There's no rules. If you're just starting out, you may just want your next one to be in a single solid color. You may not want to start doing this yet, which is fine. I would go, so if you're going to do this fabric, then I would do, this was the fabric that we did our center in. Then we did this one. So if you're not going to, if you're just going to do one color per row, then you're back on this fabric. The only thing that you want to do is, because this is a single direction fabric, you want to cut so that your strips are remaining upright. If you even care. You don't have to. You don't have to. This is yours. You can do whatever you want with it. Sometimes it's a better effect if you don't care, and some things are upright and some things are not, and some things are all over the map and some things are at an angle, and I'm just going to start listing. I'm going to start listing things. Okay. So we're going to go that way, taking off those ends. These are the, again, you can see all rights reserves or whatever it says. So I'm just going to come a little tiny bit back, get those out of the way, line everything up, flip it around. I'm going to go, yeah, these aren't perfectly lined up in the first place, so I'm going to cut that. Then I'm going to move forward. I'm going to do those a little bit longer. Yeah, let's get that castle in there. Go forward. And I'm going to leave these ones as is. We're going to do that. I don't have enough for the rest. I'm just not going to torture you guys with the entire process. And I'm going to get these ironed up. I'm going to iron these up right quick. I'm going to get back over to the machine. We'll show you how I'm going to piece all these together. I'll get a couple done from there, and then I'll catch up with you in a minute. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, I am back. I remembered that my wife asked me to offset with pink because the white on white can be really hard to see. So this is actually pretty simple. And again, how much fabric you need at this point really depends on how much you want to add to this. Every piece of fabric that you want to use. So if I want this to be one single piece of fabric, then I just need a 16.5 inch piece of fabric. But every time you sew two pieces of fabric together, so this piece of fabric here is what? It is 4 inches plus 2 inches. This is a 6-inch piece of fabric. But to sew it together, I'm going to lose whatever the amount of seam allowance is. So if a 6-inch piece of fabric, come on, don't fight with me. Don't fight with me, you little thing. So a 6-inch, two pieces of fabric that total 6 inches in length now become, and don't forget, some of you guys are using wider seam allowances. This is where your seam allowance matters. So I'm going all the way across. This piece of fabric is now, see, the pink is there. You can barely see it because thanks for choosing light colors that are difficult to see, honey.
You're welcome.
Yeah, okay. So now this piece of fabric is now, instead of being 2 inches, it's now an inch and 3/4. So this piece of fabric is now 5.5 inches. Approximately. I'm just using the little ruler that's on the front of my machine. So this is where I can tell you that it needs to be 16 inches when it's done, but I can't tell you how much fabric to use because the whole purpose of this is for it to be random. So the rule here is that one pile is for each fabric goes in its own pile. So you want to alternate them. So I've got the backing fabric here. I've got the I've got the inner fabric here, the outer fabric here. In outer fabric, I just used some pink because Lisa wants some splashes of more intense color. And I'm going like that. Yeah, here's a really good example here. So I started off with a 2-inch piece of pink, and now I have a slightly over 1-inch piece of 1 inch. Oh, yeah. Let me see. Let me double check. I got a ruler. I got an actual ruler down here. Let's see what I started off with. I started off with a 1.5 inch. I started off with a 1.5 inch piece of pink, and now I've got a 1-inch piece of pink. So I'm not trying to make it complicated for you guys. I'm just pointing out that this is why this is a perfect. This is why for me personally, it's a perfect project for using up scrap. What you also need to do this matters. Actually, it doesn't. It's easier if you put your seams to the if I put both seams to the inside on this, then if they're out this way, there's no chance of that extra pink showing through because darker colors can shine through really light colors. It's hard to explain. I mean, okay, it's easy to explain. This is my very first video. Be nice to me. It's my first video. Okay, so I'm gonna ask my wife. I'm gonna let her have a choice. I mean, I'm just so freaking generous here. Do you want white, pink, white, pink, white, pink, or do you just want little splashes of pink here and there?
I trust you either way. What do you think will look better?
Whatever makes me have to do the least amount of work.
Which will look better? I love the idea of a fair amount
white,
of
pink, white, pink, white, pink.
That's what thank you.
Wow. Okay. So I'm gonna go. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go 1 pink, 1 pink, 1 pink, 1 pink. Because what you would do, like if this was like, say this was like yellow green, then you would go yellow green pink, yellow green pink. You can do it any way you want. It's yours. You're doing it your way. The one thing that I like to do is I like this to be as random as possible. That's my only real rule for this. Finger press, push your dark seams to cover up your dark seams. You know what's going to happen is I'm going to forget and not do it. All I have to do is miss one and it's going to look weird. That's okay. I didn't have them all done up. I'm very likely, I'm going to do one and attach it, and then I'm going to like give you guys a break while I do the rest. And then we'll go from there. So I'm going to get this done. Come on. I'm probably going to do that. Hey, there's a schmancy ass fast forward function, so I think I'm going to use that. I'm just going to, all you're going to hear is chipmunk sounds in a second. So here we go. So I've got a strip. Now, I've got, that one looks like it's upside down. That one's upside right, and we don't care. This is important. We don't care. Because these are going to be the sides, the backs. Now, in order to make sure this is random, I'm going to, is it even here? It's not even on that camera. My Lord, what are you doing, Piggy? I said, my Lord. That's not even, usually I say, oh, fuck. Anyway, we're not going to get into that. Okay, so we're just going to go, what I already showed you, we will go all the way across. Now, because this is random, two things are going to happen here, and this is really, it's not really important. I keep saying it's really important because it's important to me. Okay, so what you want to do now is you want to kind of, if I put this to the end here, and mark it up, when I get to this end here, I'm going to be sewing through like 1 millimeter of pink at the end. So just take your piece and just adjust it. And I want that pink to stay on the design. I don't want to have to cut. If I have to cut through this, it's going to leave just a sliver. It's not going to look weird, but it's not going to match the way I'd like it to. So I'm going to bring this here. So this hanging over at the top, and that's fine. So again, pin it, clip it, do whatever you need to do to it. I'm lazy, so I'm not doing anything. Bring it to the end here. Get your stuff lined up. I'm just going to do the first one to get this started. See, I've got lots of this left. This is probably enough for the next half. So you're going to want 4 of these. So your minimum is to make sure, on this one here, the minimum is to make sure that your chain is at least 16 and a half. Then you're going to want 18 and a half, 18 and a half, and then you're going to want 20 and a half as your minimums. You want to make sure your chain is at least that long. And you want to be able to randomize it as much as you can. So this is doing it this way without trying too hard to measure things guarantees, if I don't do it this way, I will if I don't do it this way, then what I'm going to end up doing is trying to randomly organize it. And that can be time consuming and frustrating and all sorts of stuff. So I just don't do it. So I'm going to put this one on to show you what it looks like. Again, because I have dark and light, I folded both of them. I folded the white inward towards the dark so that there's nothing to show through in case anything shows through the front. It's not likely, there's enough layers of fabric, it shouldn't happen, but why take a chance, right? And again, this is your project. You can do whatever you want. It's up to you. I'm using the pink. I'm using the pink thread because hopefully to help you guys get a better look. And because Lisa wants the pink strips, it's going to look nice together. I am going to finish this up. These sew on exactly the same way that the first one sewed on. The only thing is that you're preparing a strip first. That's it. So there's no special formula to making it. And the next one's on. Bring it out. This time, obviously, when I'm cutting it, I'm going to cut off the excess from this side the same way I've already showed you. I'm gonna lay it down backwards. I'm gonna line it up. I'm gonna carefully cut it. I'm gonna leave a little bit extra just in case something slips. I'm going to finger press it. I'm not going to make you guys dizzy this time. I think you know what I'm doing when I say finger pressing now. I'm going to push this out. And there is the next strip on. Now I just got to do 3 more, finish this round, and then I'm going to do another set of 4 because I want mine to be big. So your choice. Once you get, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this one on, then this one on, then this one on, then this one on. I'm going to do one circuit at a time. I'm going to come back once I have the next 2 rounds on. I'll show you how we finish this up. And the top is done. So partway through, Lisa decided that she wanted, instead of having a second row of this on the outside, that she wanted it in pink, just because the white on white on white on white. So what we've got right now is we've got our 12.5 inch in the center. We've got 2-inch strips of, where did I put it? There it is. So we've got this material here, 12.5 inch piece of that in the center. Around the outside, we have a 2.5 inch strip sewn in with a 1/4 inch seam, so 1/4 inch on each side of this. It's a nice little, it's a matching fabric to go with that one that's there, so that's fine. The next row out, we've got these 2 fabrics and the pinks. So one backing, but this was going to be the backing. Let's just back up. This was going to be the backing. This was what Lisa had picked as the backing fabric, but as the project went on, she decided, she came over and checked it out because she likes to get in my way like that. You guys know my wife. She's horrible. It's bad. Anyway, she has headphones on and can't hear this. She'll get a great surprise later to find out I'm shit-talking her. Still gonna shit-talk her. Okay, so anyway, this is done. This is done, and let me get my little, let me get my little, let me get the ruler. Let me say ruler. Can I say ruler? So this has finished at 23 inches by 23 inches. So this is already a really long video, so I'm going to stop it here. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to film another video. I don't know if we're going to put them up together. I don't know if we're going to put the first one up right away and then put the next one up in a couple of days. But the next steps are to take this, get the batting on it, get a backing on it. Lisa has decided that for her backing, she wants more of the pink. So I'm going to be finishing this up, getting it turned over. There are tons of designs for blocks. This is basically a giant block. If you look up quilt blocks of any kind, this is what I made. I made a big quilt block. So if you see a pattern or a design or a style that you like, In order to make this particular mat, you don't have to do this. You can do any quilt block that you like. You just want to make sure that whatever design you pick is going to finish at a size that makes sense to you. So if you're starting with 12.5 inches in the center, you're going to go 12 inches. A 2.5 inch strip when you're done sewing it is 2 inches wide. So you have 2, so 4, 6, plus that, 12, 12, 24. You're going to lose a little bit as you go. These really aren't that hard. If you know anybody who does happen to quilt, I'm sure they can walk you through the basics a hell of a lot better than I just did. If you're sewing by hand, this is going to take you more time, but these aren't difficult. You can also just take, just this, your center. You can just put one fabric here, a different fabric here, a different fabric here, and you're done. You don't have to make these complicated. This is where we are at for now. I'm probably going to edit the crap out of this because I just keep talking myself in circles, but we know that's what I do. So this is done. We will be doing we will be pairing this up with the backing fabric, with the batting. I will show you what's called quilt as you go. It's a particular technique. Something that people that are learning to quilt hear about is binding. A lot of people hate binding. This particular method doesn't require binding because the back becomes the binding. It sounds complicated. It's not. It's super simple. I make most of my stuff using this quilt as you go technique. So I'll be showing you that in the next video. And I'll be showing you how to quilt. It's not hard. And, well, it's as hard as you want it to be. So anyway, this is the design that I used to make this. This is just a different color of this. So you can just use any combination of stuff that makes sense to do what you want. And what I'm going to do in the next video is to show you how I get that on, get the quilting done, get this lovely edge done, and we're going to do that. I'm going to do that in just a minute. You're going to be able to see that probably in a couple of days. So have a great one. Thanks for hanging out with me while I did this. I hope some of what I said makes sense. If none of what I have said makes sense, I hope you at least enjoyed hanging out with me and keeping me company while I did this.